and I had to look it up because I heard you mention just a little bit of it, and that got my true crime juices flowing, and I had to know. And so.
And we're standing very close to the spot where Dr. Ryder was actually found mob justice.
Yes.
He was hung from a tree very similar to this one that's behind us. The tree has been taken by the road today. In other words, where the road runs now is where the tree used to stand. He was hung in the front yard of a house. That's, of course, the house, the yard, everything's gone now. Dr. Ryder was going on he was going to trial. And, people decided not to wait for trial anymore. But what did he do?
He murdered Miss Sally Owen, and because he was in an obsessed love with her, and Miss Sally made the massive mistake of saying the world's worst rejection line: "I just want to be friends."
That's right. And so Dr. Ryder, he didn't take too kindly to that.
No, I actually even heard that he did some things before the major incident that could have been a foreshadowing, if anybody. Yes, I heard that. So we're going to be telling this from the places where it actually happened. This is not, but we're as close as we can get to being historically factual. Right now, the historically accurate place is a highway. Not great for filming. So stay tuned. Okay, so we were discussing the deadly dentist of Talbot County.
That's right.
And his name was Dr. William Lee Ryder. And the problems started basically when he was new to town. He set up his dentistry practice and was doing really well.
So he was well beloved by the community.
He was very liked and well beloved by the community. And he had a best friend that people heard Dr. Ryder very often say Gus Pearson was his best friend in the world. And, but very soon, the problems really started when Miss Sally Emma Owen came home from college, from Wesleyan College in Macon. Her and her sister, Lizzie May, and Dr. Ryder immediately took an interest in her. So
was he much older than her?
Oh, yeah, he was born in 1865, I think, and she was in 1871.
Okay.
Problem began Easter Sunday of 1896. And Lizzie May, the younger sister, and Sally Emma, the older sister, were having an Easter. It was more of a graduation party at their house, the Elms. And in that...
Which still exists today?
Yes. Yeah, it was Jeannie, Bill, Mary Matthews. It was just those two girls were there at their house. They had kind of an overnight spend the night thing, and then on Easter Sunday morning, they spent all morning getting ready they had bows coming to pick them up. And they had, the buggies finally pulled up, and one buggy had Matthew McCoy, who was, I believe, the brother of, he was Jeannie Bill McCoy. He was the brother of Jeannie Bill McCoy, and I think he drove Mary Matthews, which was kind of his girl, his main squeeze, and he drove one of the other girls. And Dr. Ryder came with his buggy, and he had Sally Emma. Now, a foreshadowing event kind of happened on that drive back from Pleasant Hill that's now Woodland, to Talboton, where the McCoy house was, because all the girls were going to spend the night at the McCoys. They were just having a big time. That was the idea anyway. There was an incident where Dr. Ryder's buggy, whatever, suddenly just bolted and nearly ran the first buggy off the road. So I'm sure they were all sitting there like, what? And
now, was this intentional or was it accidental?
I think it was. I don't know. It could have been accidental, but I believe that Sally Emma told her friends later that. So, as they're writing, Sally Emma, I think, probably later told this to the girls, which, if that, girls do. It would have been one of those things where as soon as she got to the McCoy house, she would have been like, y'all, this was so crazy,
Right.
in today's terms. But I don't know how it would have sounded back then. But apparently, Dr. Ryder told her how he felt about her. Okay, so as they're going, apparently, Dr. Ryder and Sally Emma were the second buggy in the group of three. And he explained to her how he felt. Love, marriage, he wanted it all. And she was like, I really, like you as a friend, but I actually have feelings for Gus Pearson.
Oh, his best friend.
Yes. But anyway, this is his best friend. She's just said she's in love with. And about that time is when the buggy burst forward.
Gotcha.
So I'm thinking it was a bit of a temper tantrum kind
Yeah.
of thing. And, I get it could be an accident, but I don't know. He had made it that far without the horse giving him problems. I'm assuming.
Right.
It just seems like too much. It's too much of a coincidence, and that he was just having a temper tantrum, and nearly killed them both in the process, and nearly ran the first wagon. That I think it was Will Gorman was his name. That was the third guy. Off the road, Anyway, he regained control of it, and they went on to Talbot, and all the guys dropped the girls at the McCoy house, and the idea was for everybody to go to church. I read certain things. The blog of Reed's story, which I will link in the description, said that Sally Emma and Gus Pearson did go to the Methodist church there in town, but a lot of other things I read said that she had just gotten over the measles. Her mama did not want her out in the night air, and so she stayed home, and Gus stayed there at the McCoy house, and they were in the parlor talking. And some of the other girls saw Dr. Ryder at church. He had even stopped by before. He stopped by the McCoy house to see if Sally wanted to go with him to church. And when he got there, she and Gus were sitting in front of the fire alone. There were people in the house, but they were in the parlor alone, which back then was a no-no. Not really, but he did not like that. They invited him to sit and talk, and he wouldn't. He just sort of left. So around 9 o'clock, this is well after church is over, a man named Cecil Dante was standing on the street, and he saw a shadow going up the stairs of the McCoy house. A couple minutes, it wasn't long later, that they heard boom, boom. He had a double barrel shotgun, and he shot Sally first. He kind of crept into the hallway, stood there, and she was kind of sitting on this side of the fireplace, and Gus was on the other side, and it was, one of those things where you could stand in the hallway and kind of get a view, and he stood in the shadow there, and her head, and
And this was, how long was this after he had stopped by earlier in the day?
I think basically after church.
Gotcha. So
It's a few hours.
An hour later.
An hour or so later, and he had had time to stew, I think.
Yeah. So he'd come in, seen the love of his life with his best friend.
Mm-hmm.
He goes off, maybe to church, maybe somewhere else, stews about it, comes back, creeps up in the shadows, executes Sally.
Yeah, and he went to execute Gus, but he missed, and I think Gus had already hit the dirt, as soon as,
right.
It wouldn't take much of seeing what happened to Sally to make you, hit the ground. And so he ran out the door, and he threw his his shotgun on the ground. Dr. Ryder took off running basically up Main Street to the hotel, rooming house, whatever it was he was living in, and downed a bottle of morphine.
Trying to kill himself?
Yeah, I'm assuming that would be the only reason I think he would down a bottle of morphine.
Yeah, no doubt.
And some people saw him run in, and then, he just kind of disappeared into the night. And of course, by now, things have been heard at the McCoy house, and so the sheriff, I think his name was Burrell, got posse together to go look for him. And when it was close, it was like, I don't know, it took them a few hours to find him. When they found him, he was in Pearson's Pond, hiding under, like half conscious, hiding under lily pads. And he had slit his throat.
Oh,
man. Apparently the morphine wasn't enough to kill him, and this part I don't understand, because of the fact that there was a doctor who around midnight got him and treated him, pumped his stomach, gave him meds for poisoning and things like that, and saved his life. I wonder why.
So he had not been arrested at this point. He immediately executes Sally and then tries to off himself.
Yes,
That's right.
in 2 separate ways.
Yeah,
And
two
hides
separate
in
ways.
actually you could say 3, because he did hide in a pond, so he was probably thinking, hey, I'll drown.
Right.
So, he failed at all 3 things.
Yeah.
Which is,
He was saved by the doctor.
yeah, and they took him, as soon as he was well enough, they took him to the Columbus jail, because they knew he was a target for lynching, because people were mad.
And that was no short ride to Columbus, Georgia at the time either. That was along the old federal road
Yeah.
in a buggy.
Yeah, and they said they used a train. So they took the train in Waverly Hall to Columbus, and then moved. So it was kind of like buggy from Talbot Courthouse to Waverly Hall,
Train to Columbus.
train to Columbus, and then buggy from the train station to the jail in Columbus. And he continued to try to commit suicide. He asked for something enough to distract the deputy, that was guarding his guard, basically. And he took blankets and lined his cell with them. I never knew they gave anybody more than one blanket. I guess maybe, but anyway, he had a bunch of blankets, and he lined his cell with them and set them on fire and sat in the middle of it.
Wow.
And the deputy risked his life, ended up getting injured, burns, to get him out and put out the fire. I'm assuming mostly to save the courthouse, and the other prisoners, who were probably just in there for liquor.
Right.
Not murder, not murdering, the county sweetheart,
Yeah.
And, but that was one of the problems during the trial. So the trial starts, and they're having him under heavy guard. They're moving him, like you said, it's a crazy thing. They're moving him back and forth every day of the trial.
Because the trial is happening in Talbot.
Right.
And they're housing him in Columbus, so they're moving him back in the days of trains and buggies.
Yeah, and he's got, the sheriff and several guards guarding him. And, most people were, were okay to let the court do its job. But, they go through, there were several problems with the trial. One of them was that the judge got sick in the middle of it, and he had to turn it over to another judge, and then back when he was better. And the defense didn't like that. The defense was trying to plead insanity. They were trying to plead that there was no proof, no one had recognized them, him. And, but I would assume that Gus Pearson probably got a good look at him. It's not that dark in that house. I don't know. It was after dark. But the fact that he knows him very well, I would
Right.
assume he would kind of have an idea. But also you had the people on the street when he was running back up the street to his house, pretty much everybody knew who they were looking for in the posse. They were immediately going, oh, yeah, that was Dr. Ryder, and, because people had seen him. So I'm like, to me, that's not a great defense, because Gus was alive, and he
Right.
was there, and The other thing was Dr. Ryder kept trying to kill himself multiple times. And so some people could say he was, that he was insane because he kept trying to kill himself. To me, that says guilty. Why else would, but, at the end of the trial, the jury was out not very long at all. They came back with a guilty verdict, and he was sentenced to hang. The defense immediately, objects and says this is, they used a technicality that was law in the state of Georgia at that time, that you could not hang somebody sooner than 30 days, but not later than 60 days. He didn't get executed in the 60 days from the verdict. I don't see how that works, because he gave the verdict, and it sounds to me like they pretty much called for a new trial the same day he was sentenced. So to me, that doesn't apply, but apparently they felt it did, and so they set a date for a new trial, like several months down the road. That's when everybody said, nope, he's guilty, and that's it, So it's time to take things into our own hands and all. So have you heard the rest of that story?
So I'm assuming at the time that he was headed back for a new trial?
Well, they were taking him back. The way I read it, it was that night. There's several versions according to the newspaper or the blog you read. But there was some pages that were actually listed for reference from, like, this is our land. Is that a Talbot County?
Yeah, Talbot County history.
Yeah,
There was
okay,
a land.
part of that. There was a land that was referenced in some of the stuff I read. And so it seems like they were taking him back to, anyway, he was on his way to Waverly Hall, and they caught up to, a mob was quickly created, and they caught up to him close to Waverly Hall.
That's right, they called up to him on what's modern day 208.
Okay.
And they were going to take him back and lynch him, and they heard tell that the sheriff was on the way, and they brought him up to what's known as modern day 36,
Yeah.
or the old Alabama Road, and lynched him right up the street from where we're at right now. Of course, the road actually runs through where the tree that he was hung in used to be now, but legend has it that the tree that they used to hang him still partly exists in the form of a limb. That is in what's known as the Elms House. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the legend, that the limb that Dr. Ryder was hung on by a lynch mob is still in that house to this day.
Yeah, I read from a blog created by Reed Stowe, a distant cousin of Sally Emma, that limb was still there. They kept a piece of it to, I just remember the whole event by.
I believe that they cut it down and presented it to the family.
Okay.
After he was hung and it was done, they cut it down and presented it to the family, that justice had been served the old Southern lynching way.
Yeah, and honestly, I think lynching is wrong, but in this case,
Yeah,
I kind of feel like the justice system let that family down, and maybe I don't. To me, it's pretty cut and dry.
yeah, he did it, and the community served justice.
Yeah, and they said that,
After they felt that they were let down by the court system.
right. They let the court system do its job, and then when it let them down, they couldn't take it anymore. And in the community, because Dr. Ryder had been so loved, I read that people were very angry. His friends and family were incredibly angry, and his brothers, who were, one was a minister, one was a professor at a college, and another was a doctor or something. One of them knew the governor of the state of Georgia, and they went looking for justice for, trying to get the mob, get the mob arrested for murder. And of course, when you have a mob that maybe a bunch of people have seen, most people sided with the Owen family and did not speak a word. And so, of course, because they didn't speak a word, they could not get anybody.
Right.
The only thing they could do is that governor did put out some laws that were stronger laws against lynching, and it was kind of one of the things that started the beginning of the end of, trying to get rid of lynching.
Right.
But I did read in one place that they had, when they thought the sheriff was coming for them, they just stopped on the side of the road, threw some rope up that tree, gave him a chance for a last prayer, and they put him on their shoulders, and then just stepped out and let him.
Yeah.
So that's that is a very educated term.
That's right. That's it. Very descriptive.
I don't want to be too gross, but so I myself think that justice was served. I'm sure there were other people who would not, but in that case, yeah, I think it was.
Absolutely. I think it's all part of history.
It is. It's an interesting part of history, and law enforcement was few and far between back then. It was
It's
a
very
different
different,
world
yeah.
than what we live in now. And so, yeah. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
collaborating with me and talking with me
Absolutely.
about this.
It's an extremely fascinating case, that's for sure.
It is, and it was in the newspapers regionally. It seems like I even read nationally, but it was on a lot of. It was huge.
The impact
Huge.
has never left Talbot County to this day.
Yeah. So I think it's cool when you have you do have these old stories that just pass down generation to generation, and even to people like me who live outside of Talbot, or Harris,
Absolutely.
So, all right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.